This is a quick little video on how to use the RealisticFirearm plugin. Now, if you have not already enabled the plugin, go ahead and go to Plugins, and under the Weapons category, you can simply enable it, restart your project, and you'll be good to go. Now, in order to kind of set everything up, assuming you already have content ready that you're trying to test it with, we can go over here to Realistic Content or RealisticFirearm Content, go to Test Map, and open up the test range. Now, if you do not see this folder or this folder, go over here to View Options in your content browser, check Show Plugin Content, but you should already be able to see it. So once you have the test map open, this is where you can kind of set up everything however you see fit. So this map, we have targets at 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, and 600 meters, as well as a simple wind directional source and a simple character. This is just for testing with the character doesn't really do anything special. It's just using the default included firearm. So it's more so just there to kind of give you something for an example. So currently everything that this includes, let me get rid of that. There we go. So currently here we have 100 yards. We are zeroed. As you can see, the impact points are in red and they spread out a little bit. That's due to the rifle's accuracy, as well as they're being pushed to the left due to the wind source. So if I zero this over to the right a little bit, as you can see, I'm now impacting a little bit to the right. I can go farther. I can pretty much just get it zeroed as close as I can. Same kind of dealio gets extended when you go to 200 meters and farther. So I need to go a little farther right, like so, and I need to come up. And now I'm zeroed at 200. So that's for the most part how this is going to work. So we have adjustable magnification as well as a zeroing system in place. Now you can alter the default zero as well, as that's was a big part of this. So for example, if I go to the blueprints and open up the optic, you'll see here under firearm plugin, sorting zero data, and we'll have an element in the right here. So this element contains the reference to the class type, which in my case, it's our blueprint firearm that we're holding. The distance we're trying to zero to, this is if you just want to have, for some reason, read it off, as well as the amount of clicks it takes to get to that zero for both elevation and windage. Now, most likely you're just going to be touching the elevation, as your windage really doesn't necessarily need to be touched unless you're trying to do something special that I'm just unaware of. So, mill adjustment size, this is as close as I could get to the actual adjustments comparable to real life. But if you're, for some reason, you want to change the size of each click, you can do so here. So one click moves your point of impact, X distance. Then we have the magnifications. So right now I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we have 6 elements total. So we start out at 4 power, go to 8, 10, 12, 16, and then I have one at 50. Now the one at 50 is just for zeroing purposes. So that way we can see where the actual projectile is impacting, such as all those little red dots there. Now if we move on to the bullet, this has a couple things to it. So we have draw debug box on impact. That's what those little red squares were, as well as the size. So you can alter the size to kind of really just make it easier for you to see. If for some reason you have, bad eyesight or something, you can actually see them a little bit easier, make them bigger, smaller. And then when we actually get into the functionality of the projectile, we have the drag curve. So the drag curve should be unique to whatever bullet you're trying to replicate. So for example, I am trying to have one that's similar to 5.56. So I made a drag curve that just kind of goes alongside of that. And then we have our velocity. So this is in feet per second. So 5.56 and 193 has a velocity of 3,200 feet per second, roughly. So that's what I set it to. So these are kind of linked together a little bit. So if we have, let's compare. So if we have a round that's like 5.56, that's very thin. It's going to skim right through air. It's not really going to have a whole lot of resistance. And then we look at another round such as like 30-30, 45-70, or even a simple just couple pistol calibers. Those are going to have a much higher, they're going to be affected by air resistance much more than 5.56. That's going to cut right through it. So in that case, you would want a more aggressive drag curve. So I have this here you can use as a baseline and either change it or create multiples of it based on the projectile that you're trying to replicate or that you want. Then we have a simple check here to dictate whether or not it's affected by wind. If you don't want it to be affected by wind, just simply turn it off and will not affect it. And then we have our actual bullet weight. So this has no functionality currently, but if you wanted to, the reason it's there is for a damage system. So that way you can figure out the velocity that the projectile hit a target at, as well as you can go based off of the bullet weight and do some sort of calculation to figure out how much damage should be dealt just that way. Because this is set up to work, well, a lot of the stuff is exposed and set up to work with blueprints such as events and functions. Now if we look at the firearm, here you can see we have the bullet class that it's supposed to fire, as well as the optic that we want to have mounted on it, and the minutes of angle, so to speak, the accuracy of the rifle, as well as the socket where the optic's going to mount and the socket where the projectile is going to be exiting from. So this MOA here, this is the accuracy of the rifle. So let me go to the bullet. I will uncheck affected by wind. Let me just really crank this up. I want to go something stupid like I'll just do 100 for the magnification. And it's set to 1 right now. So if I shoot this target at 100 meters, you can see bullets are spreading a little bit, but there's still, it's a decent grouping. It's spreading out about an inch at 100 yards. If I were to crank this up to 3, meaning it's shooting at 3 inches at 100, you can see the grouping opens up a good bit. So it's no longer nearly as tight. And same thing goes for smaller values. So if we do 0.25, that means it's shooting at 1/4 of an inch. So pretty much each bullet is going to hit within 1/4 inch of each other. So now we have a very tight grouping. You can alter the accuracy there. And just by default, I'll leave it at 1 inch at 100. So those are the features of this currently. If you want to use this along with, either your current weapons that you already have made, such as like custom meshes, same thing with the optic, you can do so. Just alter the socket location. Well, create the sockets first of all to match the names, or just alter the names here to match whatever sockets you already have. And it will just attach and use those locations accordingly. So as usual, there is going to be a link to the documentation on this, and that'll cover it in more written detail that you can reference. But that's the gist of this setup. Because if we want to cover the wind, I can't remember if I did that already, but all that is just a simple wind directional source. You can drop that in by going to place actors, drop down a wind directional source, and it automatically will pick it up. Just change the values to whatever you want, and it will alter it accordingly. As you can tell, we come out here to a farther range. Let's do 400 meters. So I'm hitting way below, and I just realized I'm not having this be affected by wind. Let me enable it. Here's our 400 yards. Shoot. You can see the projectile's landing way down there, so let's bring the impact up. Getting a good bit closer. Still can't quite see it though. So there we are. Let's bring it to the right. Bring it up more. Down 1. And now we have our rifle zeroed at 400 yards. The same thing will go to 500. You just got to keep altering till you find the values that work for you. And if you wanted to, you can even choose to 0 to set these values as the default 0. So now we're hitting the target at 500 yards. Now the big projectile there, that's just using the default first person projectile mesh just so you can visually see it, as well as to help with zeroing. But what I would do once you have everything set up, change the size of the collision component, as well as change out the mesh to either your whatever mesh you want, or just use nothing, because you don't need to visually see it. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed it, and there will be a link to the marketplace for this plugin as well as documentation.